everyone, welcome to you. Welcome back to another episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Alright, back again to our movie review. Alright, now, on today's review, I'm reviewing this and the next film in prep for the third one, which I will be checking out. And I did this with Kevin Smith's films, and I'm still doing it, so be on the lookout for the Chasing Amy review. And much like those films, I've been meaning to review these, but I never got around to reviewing them. And that being said, I have reviewed a few films that have followed in the wake of this film. And this was a film that not only revitalized the slasher genre, but it did so in a way that made it fresh and made it hip with an audience that were, for as much as I love them, a lot of people felt that they were following the typical cookie cutter formula. This was a film that breathed new life into it, as it was also trying to kill it off, which is funny, seeing as how it became what it became, and so many films started to mimic it. And what film is that, you may be asking? That film is none other than the infamous Scream, baby. Yeah. But is it worthy of the hype, and does it all come together? Well, grab your ghost face mask, grab your robe, your knife, and let's talk Scream, baby. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody knows Scream from top to bottom, even in the basics category, but for the sake of this show, and for those who don't know, because I love talking about movies and their small basics, I'm gonna do it. Because Scream, this was a film made in the year 1996, and of course, it's directed by Wes Craven. Now, Wes Craven, for those who aren't big into horror like I am, he is a horror icon. He's best known for directing The Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, his magnum opus and probably his best film, A Nightmare on Elm Street, which gave birth to Freddy Krueger, and a big franchise that is beloved by many. He also did The Serpent and the Rainbow, which I like. I don't feel it's his best film. I know that's heresy, because I know that film is a big fan base, kind of why Eddie Murphy wanted Wes for Vampire in Brooklyn. He also did Shocker. Shocker I love. I love the soundtrack to that. Has a great personality. Horace Pinker I love. However, my favorite one, not named Nightmare on Elm Street, is The People Under the Stairs. I like the feel of that film. I like the message it was trying to say. I like the kid in that movie. I think it's got a creepy atmosphere. The house itself is really cool. The two parents I thought were great. Ving Rhames being Ving Rhames. Sean Whalen, I think his name is. I could be wrong. I'll put it right there. But he's great fun in that film. Before this, he did do Vampire in Brooklyn, which I mentioned earlier. And I like the film. I don't think it's as bad as everyone says it is. But despite Wes having top billing for this film, there is another factor at play here that made this film as successful as it was. That being writer Kevin Williamson. Now, Kevin Williamson would go on to write I Know What You Did Last Summer and Teaching Miss Tingle, which he had actually sold around the time he had started writing this. And he was trying to figure out where he was going to go next. And one day he was house sitting, and while flipping through the channels, he had come across a documentary about a serial killer named Danny Rolling. Danny was a psychotic individual with PTSD from the Korean War who abused his wife and 6 kids and was cruel to animals, and he went on a murder spree in 1990, killing 5 college students till his capture. He was so disturbed by this documentary that he saw this as an opportunity and decided to write the script that stemmed from a single line: movies don't make psychos. Movies make psychos smarter. Something of which he thought of as he was writing the script and listening to the Halloween theme. He also drew inspiration from his favorite slasher movies such as Friday the 13th, Prom Night, A Nightmare on Elm Street. And knowing the slasher genre was in the grave, he decided that he was going to give the script a cheeky spin and kind of satirize the slasher genre with the characters in the movie smart, about the horror angle and knowing the ins and outs of horror films in general. And once the script was finished, they started to shop the script around with many studios lining up, like Paramount and Morgan Creek. Who won it? Miramax in their Dimension studio led by the fat fuck Weinstein brothers. Once the studio okayed the script, they began their search for a director with consideration with people like Danny Boyle, George A. Romero. Why George A. Romero, though? He's not really a slasher guy, though. But nevertheless, they went to him, Sam Raimi, Bryan Singer, Robert Rodriguez, and even Anthony Waller. Wes Craven was on the last choice of the people who they wanted to direct this film, being that he never handled a satire of this caliber and was mostly known as the serious guy. And around that time, he was planning to be a part of the Haunting of Hell House remake and had just come off the disastrous production of Vampire in Brooklyn and wasn't keen to working with a big studio again. That wasn't until the Haunting of Hell House remake fell apart and he got a hold of the script and he agreed to take it on and even helped with additional rewrites on Kevin Williamson's script. But once the script was approved, Miramax awarded the film a budget of 14 to 15 million and they got their cast together and began shooting. I know that for the effects, the team brought in K&B, who are gods in the makeup industry, to handle the effects, and they're the ones responsible for making the mask into what it is now, because originally they had the white mask idea, like it was always supposed to be white, but it was supposed to be more gargoyle-ish, something Weston and Lights, so he told them to make some adjustments into what it is now, after they also found something similar to it. And they were like, go with that. Shooting lasted till July of 1996, and the original title for it was actually supposed to be Scary Movie, which is funny because we're also going to see this year that I plan to review Scary Movie, a film that actually would be a parody of this film as well as other films following in its footsteps. That wasn't until the Weinsteins had the title changed after hearing the Michael Jackson song. I know that, I think Sony with their film Screamers sued them because they felt that they stole the title for their film Screamers, which I don't see why that bears any similarities because they're both completely different films. But that wasn't the biggest problem. The team then had to face their biggest enemy more so than Ghostface, the MPAA, which was a struggle because they gave the film an NC-17 when they first submitted it, and it took them 9 cuts to get the film an R rating, and I know this was a hassle there's even a Fangoria article detailing what they went through, and when this film came out, nobody knew what was going to come next, because Miramax thought this film was going to be dead on arrival, nobody was going to see it. Nobody knew that the big name that this film would be in the horror industry, because it opened on December 20th, 1996, so right before Christmas, and it had a rocky start. It opened to number 4 as it had to deal with Beavis and Butthead Do America, which I think was going to happen because Beavis and Butthead is a huge name. And despite this, the movie did find its footing as it made $173 million in its 2 theatrical run, and it became the highest grossing slasher of all time. Now, the film also received positive reviews from critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, it actually carries a 78%, and this was because critics praised the film for its inventive take on the slasher genre, the ghost face design, and its characters. Roger Ebert especially really liked the film and gave it 3 stars out of 4. This is surprising because since the 80s, Roger has been very vocal about his dislike of the slasher genre, and audiences seem to enjoy it more, as on that side it has an 80%, and on IMDb it has a 7.4 out of 10. The movie also sold great on video and was nominated for and won several awards. It also helped revitalize the slasher and horror genre, as it inspired a great line of films that began to follow suit, with the likes of I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, with others coming along the pipeline like Cherry Falls and Valentine. It also kind of helped the teen movie genre kind of give a boost. Like, even the writer of American Pie said that this movie helped with that area. So, got a lot to give Scream thankful for. And it would also be the first in a trilogy with a sequel getting into production almost immediately after this film, then a third film. Now, I'm going to admit something. Scream is one of those films that I've mentioned time and time again already. And I have reviewed the films that have followed in its footsteps. For those who don't know, I have reviewed Urban Legend and I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I admit, I stand by those reviews because I like those films a bit better, because I like their more straightforward, Urban Legend especially. And I just think that had a lot to do with the fact that I wasn't into the self-aware side when I first saw this film. I mean, there were aspects about the film that I liked, and I came out amused with the film. I thought it was fun for what it was going for. But I just wasn't as in love with it. In fact, even watching the sequels after, I still felt those are the films that I've wanted this film to be when I first saw it. So I didn't quite get the hype when I first saw it, because everybody was so quick to be like, this is the next big thing. This is the thing that we need to be like. And even though I liked some of those films after, it just became annoying how people were so quick to crown this film. Not saying they were wrong and they have their opinion, but I don't know. This, when I first saw it, I just didn't get as much of the hype as everyone else. But after rewatching it, I get it. I see why this film is considered a modern day classic. I do stand by the other ones being better, and I do stand by, I will say, I do prefer this one and even 3, which I saw, over this film. But for a first film and for what it did, I gotta give it respect. I'm gonna explain why later. But with the cast in this film, you got Neve Campbell from TV's Party of Five and The Craft. And this is really where it really started to grab a lot of the WB sort of actors for these types of roles who really got their start because of this. After this, like, you had I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, some of these actors would be given their big breaks with these types of films. Neve Campbell especially, who was already a hot name as she was on Party of Five. She was also in The Craft before this. David Arquette from Wild Bill, and this would also be his breakout role, and he would reprise his role in 2 and 3, and he would also be in a film called Ready to Rumble. Courteney Cox had already had some name to her, as she was already on TV's Friends and Ace Ventura Pet Detective she was also in. Skeet Ulrich from The Craft and Chill Factor he would be in. And of course, Matthew Lillard's also in this from She's All That, Hackers. Rose McGowan from Jawbreaker, Jamie Kennedy from Romeo and Juliet. He would have a role in this one as well. And you even have small roles from people like Drew Barrymore, who her scene in this film is the most infamous of this film, and it's why people talk about this film after so many years. And Drew Barrymore, this is a woman who would be in Never Been Kissed. She was in Poison Ivy, Batman Forever. You have a small role by Henry Winkler from The Waterboy. Linda Blair's in this for a bit. And playing the voice of Ghostface is Roger L. Jackson. Yes, Mojo Jojo and Butch on the Powderpuff Girls, which I don't watch. I just know because a friend of mine brought up, you know, Roger L. Jackson did Ghostface and Scream. I'm like, you serious? Holy shit. That blew my mind when I first heard about it. Now, the plot of Scream is basically we meet this girl named Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, who is a high school student living in Woodsboro, made-up town for this movie. And basically, she's going through a bit of a rough time. As we learn, a year before, she put away her mother's murderer, and it's approaching the anniversary of that incident, which also bleeds into her personal life with her boyfriend, Billy, played by Skeet Ulrich, as he's looking to be a bit more intimate with her, but she's not looking for that sort of relationship yet. However, in the midst of all this murder ends up happening to this girl named Casey, played by Drew Barrymore, and her boyfriend. And we learn that there is pretty much this guy running around town dressed in a ghost face mask, killing people. And he's killing people based around particular horror films that these kids love, and it all ties to the death of her mother. And basically, now, with the objective to find the killer, that's all placed into the hands of Deputy Dewey, played by David Arquette. And while all that's going on, we also see that they're dealing with a reporter named Gail Weathers, played by Courteney Cox, who keeps nosing her way into the case to figure out what is going on. But it mostly boils down to Sidney trying to figure out who exactly this killer is. Will Sidney be able to figure out who the Ghostface killer is? Or will she meet her demise at the end of a knife? I think why Scream, for me, was something I was never completely fond of for the longest time was the story and how meta it was for me at the time. Because when I first saw it, I don't know, at first it felt so in your face that I just got annoyed with it and how people were quick to prop it up as the next big thing. I just felt like it was smothering and just hearing about it constantly. But watching it this time, I have grown some respect for it, and I see why they went with that. I like the fact that this movie has characters that are self-aware about slashers and the rules they're in horror movies. And it isn't as annoying as I originally thought. And I think it was the fact that it's used sparingly and not to the degree that it defines the characters as I originally thought. And at the time, I'll be honest, I didn't realize that it makes the characters smarter than they appear to be. Being that they understand the trip-ups of these characters and what leads to their death is their stupidity and how in real life anyone in that sort of situation would be dead. I like that layer of intelligence to that when it comes to those situations like that in this movie. Like the moment when Sidney first gets the call and she points out how all horror movies are the same as they revolve around the same thing. They say some woman who can't act, who runs up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. Which, through a microscope, may come off as mean and disrespectful to anyone who are fans of these movies. But I feel the movie never feels like it goes to the length of talking down to those films. And it goes to honor them, which really shows Kevin's talent as a writer and how he's able to deliver that side of the story. And I also like that it appeals to people who do make fun of those movies at the same time, as these are complaints for the longest time that people have said about these movies and how stupid the characters are and how dumb they can be. So, if that's your thing and that's something you've been saying, this movie does point it out. And speaking of the middle ground, it also does a great job with keeping the tone in the middle with balancing the horror and the comedy side. With the comedy side, I feel like that Kevin was able to spread it apart at certain moments without feeling like it creates this pattern that destroys the tone, like having comedy, horror, because you would destroy any ounce of horror that was built up. And it just really worked. It worked for what it was going for. And it's funny. It can be funny. The characters have this witty and cheeky charm to them that I think makes it work and really gets a chuckle out of you, whether or not you love these films. And when it comes to the horror and how it's handled, I think it does a great job there. I think it does have this very creepy vibe to some particular scenes, this very animalistic vibe to the Ghostface character and how he kills people and just how vicious it is. And I like that it goes back to the whodunit angle of slashers of the 80s with films like My Bloody Valentine and Terror Train, and how everyone's a suspect and how everyone is pointing that out and how it ties into their love of horror. It does a great job building up who the killer is, and it does a great job playing with the audience and when they think they're on the right track. in particular, little things that I didn't notice till I rewatched it, like how Wes made the actor playing Ghostface hold the knife differently to throw off audience as to who they think the killer is, and really give the Ghostface killer a sense of personality. Little touches like that really add to the mystery of the killer, and it contributes to why the big twist of who the killer is so surprising. And there's a reason why that twist is talked about for the longest time since the release of this movie. And it also helps, too, in those moments because you really like the Sidney character. I like the fact that Kevin went the route of making her a tomboy who feels like she's only defined by her mother's death, and how that's impacted her social life, and how she can't be intimate with her boyfriend, and she doesn't get the love with these types of slashers. But as the movie goes along, she learns to rise above that, stand up for herself, and hit back at that sort of stuff. Like when Gail's interviewing her and she wants an answer on her mother's death and how this could tie into that, and she punches her in the face. I also kind of feel like she also kind of starts to see why people hold these slashers in high regard, and that is very easy to see towards the end when Randy talks about how there's this big surprise coming and that the killer will come back for a second, and she shoots him and goes, "Not in my movie." So yeah, the story itself is a lot better than I remember it being, and despite me gravitating more towards I Know What You Did Last Summer more and Urban Legend more, because I like those straight-faced horror films more, I do acknowledge that this film does do something different, and it does do it in a way where I do feel it is unique. And watching it this time makes me realize that it has worked. I just haven't been able to notice it for the longest time. Now, on a technical side, I think Wes's direction is great in this film. It's interesting to think that he was pushing himself to direct a haunted house movie and not this, considering how loved this film was, and this revived his career, because much like his best films, he's got a great eye for certain shots that really encompass the mood of what the film was going for, his use of lighting in certain scenes. It doesn't look like the film is overly lit or too dark. When Ghostface is on screen, he knows how to shoot him in a way that doesn't linger on him too long and ruins the evil presence that he has, but also knows how to keep him in the shadows. But he also gives the character the right sense of presence with his shots. And there's some unique ideas he gives to the film, like when Drew Barrymore is discovered dead and the camera does this sort of zoom in effect towards her where her corpse is hanging from the tree, or when Henry Winkler is killed and there's a shot of Ghostface in his eyes. And those are all delivered with such style that it really blends well into the film. And when it comes to the violence, unlike I Know What You Did Last Summer, which used sound to simulate the viciousness of the violence, this movie really goes for it with the kills and shows it all. And those are shot great. There's a sense of style and flair to how they're shot that really makes them stick out. And when it comes to the comedy, I think he gets a lot of great comedic timing out of his cast members and their conversations, as he also allowed for them to improvise, Jamie Kennedy especially, along with other members of the cast. But I also think he knows how to pull them back in so they don't step out of the natural zone they're supposed to be in for this world. So he's able to get a lot out of his cast in the acting, starting with Neve Campbell, who, yes, is hot. Let's get that out of the way. But not only that, I think she gives Sidney a great presence. She's got a cute girl next door sort of tomboy personality to her that you can't help but like, and she really gives her this natural side that really makes her down to earth. And I think she does a great job getting into the physicality of the role, and despite not being a horror fan, I think she adapts well to the genre. David Arquette I thought was great in this as Dewey. I know after this he would be known as the comedy guy, as he would go on to have a part in Never Been Kissed, or going to be in that Ready to Rumble movie. But I think he works well here when it comes to the comedy side, but I also think he works great with the serious side of this character of Dewey, and he plays him as a great, likable sort of brother to Sidney, that he's willing to go out of his way to help this girl who is only a friend to his little sister. So there's likability and personality to his presence. His performance also shines when he has Courteney Cox to play off on screen, and they're back and forth, which also helps because after or during this film, they actually started dating. So that presence helps with the two and their chemistry. So because they were developing feelings in real life, that may have played into why they worked so well together in this movie. Courteney Cox especially, who has already been an established actress and labeled as the nice girl, and how she comes off, some people may call her a bitch, but that's actually what interested her in getting this part, and I think she does well there. And it feels like she does have an arc where she learns that there's more at stake than just her story, so she's easy to get behind. Skeet Ulrich, I'm pretty sure everyone who has seen this film knows the twist with him, but for those who don't, I'm going to put a spoiler warning here. Him and Matthew Lillard are the killers. But even with knowing the twist, he gives the character of Billy this manipulative side that you don't realize when you first watch it, and you really feel bad for him. But when you rewatch it knowing that he's the killer, it makes his performance stronger when you know the twist, because it really shows his manipulative and guilt-tripping side that he brings to this character. And that shows through its words, especially when it's revealed later, and he has this really just like a psychotic look in his eyes, and his very very snake-like approach to how he talks and how he delivers them, has this real sting like a knife sort of feel when he talks, especially with Matthew Lillard, who is the opposite, whereas Skeet operates on being psychotic through words. Matthew is psychotic through action and has no filter when he talks. And he delivers that great and can get some darkly funny moments, like when he's bleeding to death and he's more worried about what his mom and dad are going to say. That was hilarious in a dark and morbid way. And he just comes off like he's high on sugar, and it works. I don't know what Tarantino is talking about. I like Tarantino as a director, and I also like Matthew Lillard, but both are allowed to have their opinions, and I disagree with Tarantino on his opinion here. I like Matthew Lillard in this film, and I think he's great here. Jamie Kennedy, I had a lot of fun with as Randy. He's the one who really goes for it with the film's motif of the rules and how to survive a horror movie, and he works in a video store and he's constantly referencing movies. But Jamie's improvisation and his likable presence for this movie really made his shtick work, that I can't see anybody else doing it. And he played it naturally in a way that I feel anybody could have had this guy as a friend or could have known this guy. It didn't feel out of the realm or as annoying as what the film was going for. And I think that helps because Jamie really understood what Wes wanted out of this character. Other actors, you got Rose McGowan as Tatum, Sidney's friend, who I must say looks hot in red pants in that shirt. Yeah, I said it. But besides being eye candy, I like that she's there for her friend and willing to help in whatever way she can, and she rejoices when she punches Gail. And I really thought that Rose had this sense of presence to her that really made her cute, really made her likable, really made her at times while at times a bit of a know-it-all, she was still likable, and it also helps that she gets one of the best deaths in the movie. And I gotta mention Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore in her iconic opening that gets the film in motion, and it really shows that she's inherited her family's talents, and just how she was able to deliver the terror she was feeling in that moment, and just how when she's getting killed and she's drug across the grass and you're on the phone saying, "Mom, help," you could feel the pain in her that she was trying to get across. And Drew delivered that perfectly. Henry Winkler, he's not in the film too much. He's just an uptight principal trying to get everything under control. I like his little scene, though, with the kids who are basically wearing the ghost face mask. And he says, "Oh, I'm not going to suspend you. You're expelled from this school." That got a chuckle out of me because the kids are like, "What?" And then later on, he's wearing the ghost face mask. That was funny. I know Wes Craven himself has a small part in here, as there's a little nod with him to Freddy, because he plays a janitor called Freddy, and he's actually dressed as Freddy Krueger. You see him wearing the hat and the long sleeve shirt. That got a chuckle out of me, because I'm a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan. And of course, Roger L. Jackson as the voice of Ghostface. And he's very good too. It's just him giving the voice, so it's not like there's much asked of him. But I thought he gave Ghostface this dark, twisted, scratchy voice that really emphasized the dark nature of this character. And it's easy to see why he had a voice acting career after this film. But the acting all around is fairly solid, and everybody involved gives a great performance for what they had. But of course, last but not least is the effects and the violence. And I'll say, I forgot this is a violent-ass movie. It's not incredibly gory, but there are some gut-flinching moments with the kills, like Drew's death and the aftermath, how that looked, where she's hanging from the tree and her guts are hanging out and her face is so deadpan. That image always stuck with me. Even when I wasn't the biggest fan of this film, I'll even admit that death itself was really like, oh my god, this is crazy. And while most of the movie's deaths revolve just around stabbing, there is one that sticks out to many people, and that being Tatum's death, where Ghostface keeps her locked in the garage and she tries to get through the doggy door in the garage. And as she's going through it, she gets stuck and the door goes up because Ghostface pushes the button and that kills her. I remember when I saw that, just, oh, that's gotta hurt. But besides that, the deaths aren't like the most creative, like say Friday the 13th or even Urban Legend. I thought those deaths were a bit more creative than the ones in this. Hell, even in the sequel, I'll say, I even thought the deaths were a lot better in Scream 2 and 3. I don't know if people are with me on that, but they're fine for what they are here. I'll get more into why I don't like them. But even with that said, there is some viciousness to the stabbing. The makeup in those moments look great. I didn't notice any CGI, and if there is some, they do hide it well. Part of me wonders, though, with what Wes Craven was going through with the MPAA, makes me wonder what they had to cut. Or was there any other creative kills that they had to cut? Or was it just stabbing? So, would be interesting to find that out. And the Ghostface suit looks great, like the mask itself. I thought it was really creative. I like how it resembles the Screamer painting a bit. I thought it gave the Ghostface killer some character in the same way the Halloween mask did, with it being based off William Shatner's face. And just all around, I can see why it's become an iconic mask for many people and see it being worn on Halloween a lot. But yeah, this is a really solid slasher that is a lot cleverer than I remember it being, and totally deserves to be acknowledged for that. And in terms of flaws, there is one I can say, and I already talked about this, but the lack of creative kills, because most of the kills come from Ghostface stabbing people, and that may be because they were trying to place the film in this sort of realistic reality that doesn't go too over the top. But I think they could have been still creative with the kills, and it could still have stayed in that sort of reality. Because there's only a few times you can see somebody get stabbed the same way a million times before it loses its edge. And I think even with the knife, you could have made him using the knife a bit more creative than what they do here. That's really my only problem, though. Because bottom line, I'm going to keep saying this because it deserves to be said. Scream is a film I misjudged, and I'm here to give it its just desserts. I prefer the films that came after, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend a bit more, and also I do like the second and third one a bit more, but Scream has a charm that deserves to be acknowledged, and it deserves its place in horror history, and I'm willing to give it an apology. So, if you haven't seen Scream and you were annoyed with it like I was, and you sort of felt like, oh my god, they're going over it again, everybody's saying it's the best thing ever, give it a watch. If I can look back a lot more fondly on it the second time, I guarantee you can too. Because it really showed that slashers still have a beating heart and can still be fun and can deliver something that hasn't been seen before. So, yeah. when it comes down to it, the final rating for Scream is a 9.6 out of 10. And it deserves it. It therefore gets the Alexandra seal of approval. Definitely one to check out if you haven't seen it. It is a great ride and definitely gets better with the 2 sequels. But if you're going to start with the first, like always. But that's my review for Scream. And then after that, because of its success, a sequel will be coming along the way. But I'm gonna start writing that up and reviewing that now. But as that's going on, I do have a few other films I want to review. Those 2 being Snow Day and Pitch Black. Those reviews are going to be coming. As I also am going to be working on a review of this one, and I want to get a few other stuff reviewed before I get on to the Scream films. And this one is next. So yeah, but I'm also working on a review of Resident Evil. That's coming soon. And Resident Evil 2, I should say. But I have a few other films I plan to check out, like The Whole 9 Yards, and a few other stuff that'll be coming along the way. So be on the lookout for those. But for right now, I'll see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Scream. Do you think it deserves its status among horror fans? Or do you guys like its followers more? Like I know you did last summer in Urban Legend. I'd love to know you guys' thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.